Is this thumbs up? Is it thumbs down? And maybe more importantly, what does it mean to you? Because my brain, 888-957-9570, the second the pick happened, I didn't go to YouTube to watch Ricky Pearsall highlights. I did exactly what I tweeted. Uh-oh. That feels to me like it's setting up something else. And everything that has happened since then feels like it's setting up something else. The 49ers took Deebo conversations into an offseason. You never heard them say, yeah, we're open to a trade. Nick Bosa into the offseason. They laughed off the idea of taking phone calls. Suddenly this week, highlighted by yesterday, you never close the door to a trade.
Right.
You can hear that the 49ers are at minimum burning up the phones right now as we speak.
Exactly. With the first pick in the second round coming up in an hour and 44 minutes, at least Buffalo will be on the clock at that point. And whether or not Buffalo has cap space or not, it's something we'll talk about as the show goes on. I'm just looking at David Lombardi's tweet, and he's mentioning that if they trade Deebo today, it's a $40 million cap hit. It's $22 million this year, and the remaining 18 would hit next year. So there is a possibility that they just roll into this year with Deebo, with Brandon, with Ricky, with Jawan, with Trent and Chris Conley and the rest of the receivers, Ricky Bell and
Ronnie,
Danny
Bobby,
Gray,
Ricky,
Ronnie Bell, not Ricky
If I
Bell.
love the team, who cares who you like? Let's
exactly.
go.
So there is a chance, and maybe it's a better than 50-50 chance that they do that, but I would imagine that the phone lines are open like ours are open
yeah, boy.
at 888-957-9570. I like the pick, Mark, and I like the player, and I like the pick.
No, he does look like a really...
I gave it a C+. Ask me about any draft ever, and it's always a C+.
Why
It's kind of
is
my
that?
bit.
Yeah, no,
because I'm with you as far as draft grades. And you and I did this, I think, on Tuesday, where we started to grade the draft from 2022.
Thank you.
We went pick by pick, and you can look now 2 years removed and say, okay, did you like the pick? Did you like the player?
Yeah, Mel Kiper, I want your draft grades. I just want them on April 26th, 2026.
Right. 426. That's cool.
I don't want him today. What the hell do you know? Oh, Ricky Pearsall. Well, his arms and his fingers and his, stop. What are you doing? That's not sports. He might be incredible.
Yeah.
He might stink out loud.
You just don't know.
Might be a good fit. He might be a bad fit. He might get hurt every year like Jalen Hurd. So no clue how this is going to go. I'm much more interested in the concept of the 49ers having what is set up to be one of the most expensive wide receiver rooms in the NFL, and they waltzed up to the first-round podium and took a wide receiver.
Yeah.
Now, what does that mean to everybody? What does it mean to you?
At the very least, well, it means one of two things. Either they're trading Deebo, because I think that the trading Brandon Ayuk is done. I don't think that they're going to settle for a second and a future fourth or a second and a third. I don't think that that is enough compensation. I do think they shopped him hard. They wanted to move up in the first round. They didn't get the bites that they wanted. The draft turned out to be a little bit funky with 6 QBs in the first 12 and no defensive player going in the first 14. So the draft went a little bit weird to where there was so much offense gone that the teams that were sitting there for a wide receiver, they had a chance to kind of wait, and teams who maybe would have gone elsewhere decided to make moves later in the draft. And so I don't think the Niners got the offer that they wanted for Ayuk, and so they get to 31 and they pick a receiver thinking about door number 2, which is, you know what? We might as well take a receiver that we really like now and be ready for next year when maybe we want to move off of Deebo. And the thing that strikes me, Mark, is we all want them to do this with the offensive line, yet we're all appalled when they do it for wide receiver. Because all fans have been saying is, you need to take a corner just in case, so when Demo is gone and when Charvarius is gone, and you need to take an offensive lineman. So when Trent is gone, or maybe, you move off the right tackle. But when they do it at receiver, we all think it's a wasted pick.
Yeah, no,
seems a little bit hypocritical.
It's a good point, but I get why. It's because the perception right now is that the 49ers are dealing with a large area of strength at wide receiver, and everybody wants you. There's like this thing in the draft when you're a fan. You want them to address their needs in order. which is really we got a screw loose when we do that.
Right.
That's a very poor way to draft. We need a tackle. Let's take the best tackle available when it's our turn. Horrible way to draft. And every team will say it, and you know it. It's a terrible way to do your fantasy draft. I need a receiver. I'm going to take the best receiver available. Well, you're probably going to lose your fantasy draft because you have to see the whole weekend, the whole picture. If the 49ers had taken a wide receiver in round 3, nobody would have even blinked. Nobody would have even blinked. And they think this guy is special. They grabbed him in the first round. The last time they did that with a receiver, his name was Brandon Ayuk. And the time before they took a receiver in the 30s, his name was Deebo Samuel. You like that?
Yeah.
You like that.
You're going Kirk Cousins on me.
Well,
he doesn't like that.
R.I.P. Kirk. Good Lord, what a night for him. But anyway, like, it's interesting. We all want that to go in order. The Niners are abundantly aware that they need to address offensive line, and I have no doubt that later today and tomorrow they will do exactly that. And this whole thing will get addressed. Here's something else I thought of. And this goes out to the Kyle Shanahan is arrogant crowd because, well, yeah, he is. I personally am not bothered by that. I think he's a phenomenal coach. But a lot of people get bugged by the arrogance of Kyle Shanahan and sometimes, by extension, the arrogance of the whole organization by their behavior, right? Think about this now. Think about this. If we really break down the way the night went, I think we've spent the last few weeks doing the whole, would you rather have Brandon or Deebo? One is this style. One is that style. One's healthier. One's not. One can run the ball. One's more traditional. We're doing and then which is more replaceable? If the Niners need to clear some money in the room, who's more replaceable? Did you see the way the Niners approached this draft? They didn't go in trying to replace Brandon Ayuk. They didn't go in trying to replace Deebo Samuel. They went in and said, we'll replace either. We don't really give a rip. We think we can replace either one of them with a snap of the fingers. We're going to spend 2 hours trying to trade Brandon. And if that doesn't work, then we'll spend the next 2 hours trying to trade Deebo. My mind was blown how yesterday turned into either, both, whatever.
Neither, yeah.
We're just going to get work. Yeah, we can do this in a number of ways, which felt very confident. That felt very confident, and we all know who's running offense and wide receivers with the 49ers. It felt very confident to think, okay, this is a business. We need to clear money. And they looked at each other and went, which one should we move on from? And Kyle went, picked his teeth. Either.
Or neither.
Whatever.
I mean, either or neither.
That's next level.
Yeah.
That is some chutzpah.
It is. And, if you're Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, you're not feeling the heat on the seat at all. Your seat is actually ice cold. So you've got a lot of wiggle room, not a little wiggle room. You've got all the room you need. And so you get down to the 31st pick and you like the player. And I'm assuming that they really like the player because you wouldn't have drafted him if you didn't like him. And so you look at a wide receiver and maybe he was the best available player on their board. And you take him thinking at the very worst, you've got a guy who you can draft and stash for next year. And maybe you use him on punt return, or maybe he ends up being in the Ronnie Bell role, or maybe he's Ray McLeod,
Well, I mean, at minimum.
At minimum, he's Ray.
Although Trent Taylor is there, too. There are people who can do that.
Right.
They sometimes mix and match, right? Sometimes they're like, throw Deebo back there. We really need a return.
Yeah.
So they might mess around with a little bit. That's actually one of the things I like about it, if they keep Deebo. And that remains my number one hope. This was step one to my number one hope. My number one hope was deal with this next March. Deal with it next March, but at some point in this draft the guy who you feel is going to be ready to really, really boogie in year 2. And I do want to spend today seeing if you and I can find common ground on this. It's not that I don't think rookies can go play. They can go play. They can contribute. You mentioned there's a list of them who achieved 700 yards.
Yep.
And I'm like, right, they can do that. I look at Deebo and Brandon as much bigger than, hey, can you do 700 yards? They have this intricate, leadership role with blocking downfield and emotional and Deebo is out in front of the boombox and all of the things that these players do. So to replace that when you are 21 or 22 and you've never played in the NFL before and be ready to do it by week 1, I don't find it impossible. I find it wildly unlikely. So
he's not going to carry the boombox, but can he go out and have 50 catches and have 600 yards?
Yeah, but that's not enough. That's not Deebo. Deebo is much more than that. I know that's what maybe his catches were.
He's 60 for 892.
Right, and so that's much more than 600, but he also missed a bunch of games. He also runs the ball a lot.
He missed 2 games.
Yeah, well, but he also barely played in 3 others. So he went out in the first quarter of a couple games. He was a decoy in another game. Deebo missed some time. My point is, it's very unlikely that would be an A-to-A replacement. I'd rather have the guy here for a year and let him really boogie come year 2. However, you make a good point in responding to that, which is, boy, that feels awkward for Deebo Samuel this year.
Right, because you're going to have the guy who is likely going to replace you, and Deebo knows what his dead cap number is, and he knows his contractual situation, and whether he gets traded between now and the end of the weekend, or if he comes back and he's cut next year, he understands that the writing is somewhat on the wall for his time as a 49er. So if you're Deebo, you might actually look forward to getting traded today or tomorrow to get that fresh start.